what I have said continuously is that CARICOM needs to take responsibility for intellectual property Caribbean-wide. It is too great an issue for them to ignore. The European Union has got it together. They have got directives, they've got policies, they've got plans. As an international grouping of countries, you need to have that in place, or else you're wasting time. I don't see how the Caribbean single market and economy is going to succeed at all if we fail to deal with intellectual property. It is huge. There's no escape.
You mentioned blocks of isms or areas being able to do something. You mentioned the EU. In the same breath, you mentioned CARICOM, which has been over 30 years, almost 40 years in existence. How come CARICOM, after all these many years, were not with all the resources at their fingertips? Resources meaning the number of writers we've produced, 3 Nobel laureates in literature and other fields. Right? How come, and other intellectuals, how come we weren't able to move in this direction? And I know, and you know, there are some countries who have made a move, right? How come the community has not moved?
It is a question that I have asked, and I have examined it in scholarly journals, because it is fascinating to me that they would sit there and not consider this huge, cutting-edge, technologically advanced,
you say fascinating,
legally
it's not
advanced.
Fascinating.
It is fascinating. It is fascinating. The world is moving forward in law and technology, and they're sitting there probably not understanding that you cannot be marketed forever as sun, sand, and sea, but you have got to do things that will help the region to have a better voice, a stronger voice, even in negotiations at certain fora. When you sit in the United Nations General Assembly and you listen to these countries, the General Assembly in some select meetings, and you get a chance to hear what goes on in negotiations, size matters.
Yes.
So you cannot jump up as an individual country and say, oh, we're going to do our thing. Nobody's going to listen to you. You wouldn't even get past the first round. So it's important that people pay attention to international intellectual property. It's not a homegrown thing anymore. It's not that you can do your thing individually as you please and beg for time and behave as though you're a settlement in outer space. We can't do that anymore, and it's becoming critical.
Some of the blame, I mean, you're working for the Caribbean region.
I am.
Technically advising them. So we can point our finger to you as someone to blame for inability, inaction, slow movement towards realizing what we should do.
Not at all. You have to blame your policymakers who don't listen to me. And let me tell you something. I was invited by WIPO to speak on this issue before becoming involved with them in an advanced way. CARICOM heard me, and they ignored it.
No.
So it is your policymakers that you have to blame. People who are not interested enough in the subject, and perhaps who can't see what is going on. People like me, we engage in scholarly investigations. We don't just jump up and down and make a whole lot of noises. Everything is done in a systematic manner. It has to be peer-reviewed. It is internationally recognized. It has to be able to stand up to international scrutiny. Everything that I do has to stand up to international scrutiny, or else it won't work. You'll just be another joker making a set of noise. So that won't cut it. They need to listen.
I'm sorry, I'll point the finger back this way as we turn to you not making noise only, but you've actually put your thoughts down on paper in a number of publications. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Essays in Caribbean law and policy, and the other one is on copyright. And this is my pet subject. I like to see my leaders. I like to see leaders holding their own in front of an audience. Public speaking skills. Tips to becoming a competent presenter. I love that. I love when, a leader of my country. And there's a lot to do with our oral presentation. It's not as it seems. This man can speak, or this woman can speak. He or she gets up there and blah, blah, blah. A speech, a presentation, is a composition like an essay, like a poem, like a book. Talk about this intangible heritage of us, the making of speeches.
I would hardly call it intangible, but it has been said that it would go out of fashion because people are using computers and they're doing other things. That will never happen. It's the major means of communicating, and it is how we convince people to listen to us. It is how we convince them that what we're saying is worth following. And when you have great orators, and we've had some in our past, you see the results of people following a particular trend, following their policies and trying to emulate whatever it is they want them to do. Whether it is Guyanese politics, whether it is Hitler, he was a great orator. And therefore he was able to convince people very strongly that his policies were right, whatever those might have been. So
and our
it is
leaders
important.
also
We
can
have
do
had
the same
some.
thing.
We've
Yeah,
had
we
some in the
leaders.
past.
Yeah.
So focusing on presentation skills is extremely important. Now, I came to this point from very, very early. Perhaps throughout my years at Queen's College and then the Bishop's High Schools, we did elocution. I think Queen's College was the elocution capital of his country at the time. You couldn't beat us, and you couldn't beat me.
Correctly.
Having passed through all of that and having got into speaking at a deeper level, I became a Toastmaster right out of sixth form, and it continued from there. So throughout that period, I taught people, I lectured, I've counseled, I've done the works.
Okay.
And of course, I'd gotten to the highest level of Toastmasters International, which is the distinguished Toastmasters level. This particular selection of essays came out of a period, I think it was 2006, when I wrote continuously some pieces for the newspapers on public speaking skills, how you deal with tonal quality, how you present yourself, how you prepare a speech, and all the rest of it.
All the rest of it, the
All
art
the
of
rest of it.
listening.
The art of listening is one of them. The art of conversation is another, and the list goes on.
Yeah.
It helped a lot of people, and of
I
course,
can imagine.
even as you write and you present, you develop as well. So it went both ways.
I can remember our premier historian, Clem Cicheran, saying he writes to learn. While he was doing all these huge historical studies, he was learning about himself. And as you said just now, you speak, you present, you prepare your speech, and you learn.
You learn in everything, whatever subject it is. Sharing knowledge with other people always helps you to gain more yourself.
Good.
So public speaking has been my hobby and a fascinating part of my life.
And I know you like that part, and we can see it. We can take some tips from the way you present things because of the training that you've had in the field, and we can see why you are destined for greater things.
Well, thank you very much.
No, but
Very kind of you.
It's not being kind. It's that I can see, from what you've been doing, the skills you've acquired and put into practice, that there is something there for you. And we hope before too long you realize these wonderful things crowning your life.
Well, I'm sure, especially coming from you.
Let's tie up these two subjects, copyright and public speaking. I see a glimmer of smile on your face. Pet subjects, so that shouldn't be too difficult. Copyright and public speaking.
It is interesting that you choose to combine the two, because I do both all the time. My work requires that I speak with people, attend meetings, plan presentations, get the work done behind, and speak again. So public speaking and copyright and whatever else I happen to be doing are obviously very important. Of course, being able to present properly makes a huge difference in whether you are heard, whether the message gets across, and whether the relevant information is shared. So there is no avoiding having both sets of skills. But I'd like to say one final thing about international intellectual property, law and policy. I mentioned before that it is on the cutting edge of law and technology, and I think that we need really to focus more on innovations than any other thing, because the rest of the world is leaving us behind. As writers and producers, what can you do?
Yeah.
You need to get yourselves together as a body, carefully outline exactly what you want, and then make representation to get that done. Let us give the governments the benefit of the doubt that they don't quite understand what is happening on the ground, that they don't quite understand what is happening internationally, so that your duty is to give them the information that they do not have.
All right.
Because skills in this area are very hard to come by. We do not have too many professionals in the region or from the region who can deal with this. You always have to import from Geneva or some other place. So it's very important that we at least make the first move. Someone has to do it.
Most of my knowledge about copyright came to me by way of the internet. There are a few printed material I was able to get hold of on copyright. So congratulations to you on putting these thoughts like this that we can have. In fact, that's why the book came into being, so that we can have a bit of debate. They're here for reference, research, and debate. But let's go back to what I said. Most of the information I've gotten from the internet about copyright. How can we trust those sources of information that we're getting?
Of course, with anything on the internet, you have got to be careful to research your sources properly. This particular book, Copying Copyright on the Internet, was the offshoot of my master's thesis, which I had to defend very vigorously. It's a huge process, professor this and doctor that and the other. And I was approached, having lodged it in the library at the Montfort University School of Law in England, to have this book, to have it published as a book. So you know that what you're getting in this is a little more advanced, but it certainly has, yes, it certainly has all the elements that you need to know about in terms of international intellectual property. Intellectual property, as I said earlier, is not just a local affair. It has gone way beyond that and cross borders, and it involves a number of other types of international law, which we can't get into this today. So you have to be careful to research very carefully what you hear about copyright. It's just that anyone, just anywhere, can put anything on the internet and claim that they know what they're talking about.
Leave us with a line that will inspire us to do something.
You tempt me greatly to say, get busy. But I think what is important to remember is that if we don't swim with the tide, we will be drowned by it. And that, I think, is sufficient enough motivation. You see what's happening around you. As they say, you either sink or swim. So you need to swim. And quickly.
and quickly. Thank you so very much. And we look forward to your help by way of printed material, oral presentation, and other aspects of your knowledge so that we can get on the move. Thank you.
Thank you so much.